It's this. Well, not this exactly. I mean the infinite plane. So this represents, well, this should extend infinitely far in every direction. Whoa! You get the idea. If this extended infinitely far in every direction, it would be unbounded, but yet it would still be minimal, because if I was to try and distort this or add a bump or something into it, I would need more area. So the plane, that's the answer to what is infinite but yet minimal. There you go. However, there are more exciting options, or this will be a very disappointing video. This also fills the same criteria. This represents an infinite surface that is minimal, despite what it may look like. In fact, this is a minimal surface. I mean, this looks extra, but this is a minimal surface. So I thought we'd have a closer look at these. And by the way, if you're already a fan of the gyroid bonus challenge, one of my recent videos accidentally directly relates to the gyroid. There's no way you're going to guess which one, unless I put it in the thumbnail, which I probably won't. Up first, what is a finite minimal surface? Well, for that you've got some kind of local boundary. So before we were looking at shapes like the plane which have no boundary. But if we did have a boundary and we work out what's the minimum area to fill that in, and while the coat hanger is flat, that minimal area is literally just a sheet across there. And I've got here a tub of soap film, because soap film will form the minimum possible area. And I could do it like this, but it's a bit boring. Let's go into something a bit more interesting. What if I curved it like this? So the minimal area is probably not to like remain like straight from the top to the bottom all the way around, because we could save some area by coming in here. So I'm going to dip that in the solution and we'll have a look what the soap film comes up with. Here we go. Bring it up very carefully. Oh, okay. Interesting. There it is. So that's the solution. And you can see here, So that's the solution, and you can see here at the top it does curl in a bit and then back up again to save some area. And calculating that area would have been very difficult. I think technically possible for that one. It's probably a catenary, but we don't need to calculate it because the soap film can do it for us. Although that was a reasonably straightforward one, I'm going to make a much more complicated boundary and we'll see if it can solve that. Okay. All right, let's go. You know, I'm going to pinch it off a little. I think it's just a bit too big. So if I... Now, what on earth is going to be the minimum possible area for something like this? Well, we'll find out. I can dip it in the solution, bring it out very carefully. And there it is. So there is the exact curvature required to calculate. Now it's moving around a bit because I'm bouncing it, but if I remain perfectly still, well, I don't want to be too still, move it around so you can see it. That is the minimum possible area to have a surface that matches this specific boundary condition. And so anytime we do this with soap film, or we work it out mathematically, that is a finite minimum surface. Now it's time to get infinite. But how can the soap film help us with an infinite surface where there is no boundary we can dip? Well, it turns out it's just any possible boundary you want. So there are two other boring versions of infinite minimal surfaces. There's the catenoid. I did a video about catenoids before when I went to Math City in Leeds. It's when you've got two circles, you move them apart, and it's the minimum surface between those. Wonderful surface. And there's the helionoid, which is a catenoid, but you've split it to become like a spiral. And technically that spiral, like the outside bits extend infinitely far. It works. It's fine. However, this one, Costa's surface, which was discovered in 1982 by a Brazilian mathematician, is my favorite infinite minimal surface. So this middle one here, that technically is an infinite plane. So I didn't bother printing all of it because it gets very expensive if it goes infinitely far away. So this is a surface that continues all the way out, nice and neat and level. And then the top and the bottom are catenoids. So they continue out infinitely far either way as a like a catenary shape. And it's a good time to mention this video is actually sponsored by Bamboo Labs. That's the 3D printer I now have, which I printed this on. And when I wanted to print this, actually, it's the shape from the end of the video, get to that in a moment. I did a bunch of research into 3D printers. I spoke to friends of mine who'd done research, and we all agreed the Bamboo, well, the whole Bamboo Labs range is amazing. Specifically, I have the X1 Carbon. I absolutely love it. I am a novice to 3D printing, and the fact that I could just buy one and start printing things, incredible. I'll talk more about it later, but I just wanted to flag up the video is sponsored by them because they gave me a free printer, and I have a referral link below if you want to buy your own one of them. I found them super user-friendly. So how do we know a surface like this is minimal if it extends infinitely far in every single direction? Well, the short answer is you can pick any small subsection of it and show that that is a finite minimal surface. So if you were to draw any kind of line on this surface and then you were to make a piece of wire that matched that, it will give you the same shape. And actually I printed another one of these. It's a lot smaller because, you know, I'm not made of filament. This was a lot of filament. This one I was just kind of messing around, and I actually printed a closed loop on it. So in the software before I printed it, I drew that on, and because I have a 3D printer that can use different colored filaments, I was able to print it. I'll bring it closer so you can see it. I printed it. I could have just drawn it on afterwards. I get that. And originally I was just going to draw on the big one. But when I realized I could print a tiny one with that on there, I was so pleased. And what it means is if you were to get a bit of wire, like we were doing before, some kind of crazy shaped bit of wire, to match that exact 3D loop on this, and then you were to dip that boundary into the soap film, you'd get that exact minimal surface. So the reason we can say these crazy shapes, which extend infinitely far in different directions, are still minimal surfaces is because locally, any local region you care to choose is itself a minimal surface. So you could draw any boundary you want, that is a minimal surface, which means globally, the surface as a whole, minimal surface, despite being infinitely big. I love it so much. But Matt, you say, we want to see that. Don't talk about making this out of soap film without doing it, and fine, we can do it. And what I'd like to do is do the 3 boundaries where this has been cut off. So if we did like an oval here and an oval here, and then a big circle around the edge, in theory, we can get this ridiculous structure. So we're going to give it a go. It's an all hands on deck situation, as well as me. In the room, we have camera person Alex and we have editor Gus. We're going to try and build. I've got 2 coat hangers here. We're going to try and build the appropriate 3 edges and see if very briefly we can get this surface out of soap film. What can go wrong? Okay. Look at that. That's so great. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Ah. Now, while what we did was obviously perfect, there is another arguably better video made by someone named Pavel, I'll link to it below, where they have an elaborate mechanism to make one of these out of soap film. I should flag up, because we're actually not using these exact boundary shapes, we're using rough approximations. The surface we're getting is not precisely the same as this, and is not necessarily going to be the same kind of global structure, but it is this, topologically, it's the same deal. And while I love this surface, it's so nice. Look at it. Oh. The downside, arguably, is that it's all interesting here in the middle. And you can get more complicated versions with like a higher genus where there's more holes as you go around. It's all very exciting, but it's always right in the center. And then the rest of this is one boring, flat, monotonous tundra. And likewise, the catenaries just go off and do their thing, boring forever. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a minimal surface that stays interesting? Introducing the gyroid. The gyroid is an infinite minimal surface, of which I'm holding a subsection here, that is triply, that's all 3, periodic. So it's periodic this way and the other way, whichever one I didn't, the one I didn't point at. And you can kind of see that if you look at the edge, you can see there's like this wavy pattern that goes back and forth, and that continues all the way down. You can see that will continue to repeat over and over and over this way, over and over and over that way, and this way over here. So this is just like a lattice that just extends in every direction. You can see all the amazing like holes and tunnels that go through it. There's holes if you look down a flat surface, the way we happen to have cut this print. Even if you go in diagonally, you can see holes going the other way. It's so nice. It was discovered in 1970 by NASA, who were researching differential equations, and this is closely linked to differential equations. Someone called Alan Schoen discovered this 1970 at NASA. So amazing. I love the shape so much. And Alan named it the gyroid, because if you look down one of these like tunnels that goes through, and then you look at where the other tunnels are coming off it, they kind of spiral around it. So the gyroid, like a spiraling thing, is what happens if you look down the tunnels. And it's such a nice shape, or rather infinite lattice of which you can remove subsections to be shapes. It's almost a cliche in the maths art, like the visualizing maths world, that everyone uses the gyroid for everything, because it's just so pleasing. Which is why it shouldn't come as a huge surprise that I was contacted by Dan Piker, who I worked with to make the ridiculous pencil sculpture. That was the answer a couple of videos ago. And he said, I just realized the pencil sculpture has the same structure and symmetry as the gyroid. So let's knock one of them together again. Okay, I think I've got that pretty much right. So here are the two constituent parts. We've got square cross-section pencils, 3 of them, X, Y, and Z axes, that form this. This is like a cubic lattice. This also triply periodic, and that's just all the pencils at orthogonal angles to each other. And then we have what is the beginning of the hexasticks, or the 72 pencils, if you saw my video with Adam Savage about this, which these are the hexagonal cross-section pencils. They go in 4 different directions. These are tetrahedral angles. And the new shape, which I was inspired by what Dan Piker did, they did a 3D model of it, and I realized you can make it out of pencils, is basically these smoosh together. So give me a second and I shall smoosh. At the risk of overstating it, ta-da! So, oh my goodness, like I love building these, but it's so much work. So this time I started with the tetrahedral hexagons and then tried to put in the orthogonal square ones, which is my new technique of doing it. Oh, by the way, we've restocked these on mass gear because they sold out almost immediately before. They were just the surplus ones I had from last time. We got a whole bunch more if you want to give this a go. Link in the description. And because there are 4 of the hexagonal directions, and I always think it's weird because you think 7. How on earth are 7 different directions working together? Well, there's 4 of these, like a tetrahedron, and then each of the orthogonal ones splits a pair one way and a pair the other way. And if you have 4 choose 2, that's 6, and that's because you've double counted each of the 3 of these splits 2 different pairs. So it's so good, but it's so much work. Very rewarding when it's done. So much work to build. You can see the one from last time where I put a lot more effort in kind of fine tuning exactly which ones are in and which ones are out. Feel free to give it your own go. What Dan Piker realized is that this structure matches the structure of the gyroid, and Dan designed this big ball subsection of gyroid, and he got me to send over exact measurements. So I measured a whole bunch of these pencils to get their exact size, and he's designed into it the hexagonal holes so you can fit these hexagonal pencils through it. And he's then got, like the square ones just go through the normal voids because you've already got the triple period doing, right. So I'm gonna forget this. What an old-fashioned way of doing it. I'm gonna put some pencils in this. Oh, they are the exact right size. Oh my goodness. There is no, look at that. Wow, there is no give. That is snug as anything. Okay, let's put a few more of those in. Okay, so now we have all 4 tetrahedral angles going through the gyroid structure, and the square ones now should just be like the standard holes, but oh, I think we've kind of, I think they're, oh no, there they are. Okay, so now, oh, this is so good. They just fit through the normal hole in the gyroid. So that's that direction. Okay, I'm gonna put in, I'll put in the X, Y, and Z and report back. Here we go. Dan has done such a good job to exactly design this with the hexagonal cutouts for one direction, the sizing, because he zoomed up the gyroid mesh to exactly fit the square pans. It's so nice, and I think it makes it way more obvious how you can have 7 different directions meshing together so neatly. It's such a wonderful object, and Dan's made the print freely available. I'll link to it in the description. You can go grab it yourself, print it out. This is why I got the 3D printer, and the gyroid is so perfectly linked to 3D printing, because when you're doing an infill on a 3D print, one of the meshes you can choose for inside stuff is the gyroid mesh, because it fills space very neatly. It's a minimal surface, and it's equally strong under, you know, compression in 3 different directions. So it's a great infill technique, and that's why I was very pleased I was able to 3D print this exact shape. Phenomenal. Full details below. If you do make one of these with or without the gyroid, send me a photo. I'd love to see them. It's a ridiculous amount of fun, a little bit complicated in this case, but that's it. And so that's the video. Thank you so much to Dan Piker for making this possible. And of course, we should thank the sponsor of the video. All right, out of the way. Oh, so this is a Bamboo 3D. Come on, clear it up. This is a Bamboo 3D printer, and if you're into 3D printing, this thing is an absolute dream. In fact, if you've never 3D printed before, this is an ideal entry product, and I know that because regular Matt over there is useless at 3D printing, but yet when he got one of these, he was able to make all the things you've seen in this video. So this is pretty much a click and go 3D printer. You pick your model, you just put it into Bamboo Studio, hit print, and this takes care of all the work. It levels the printer. It's got a camera in there that can detect if it goes wrong. So if it starts spaghettifying, it'll detect that and tell you. And I got a bit over ambitious with some prints, and they do go horribly wrong, but this let me know. Quick FYI, since I recorded this, Bamboo have updated their firmware, which has locked out some third-party features. You can get them back if you go into developer mode, but some people are still a bit upset, so I thought I would mention that. Hasn't impacted me, but depending on your use case, you might run a print farm. You want to look into that first. Now, the very first thing I printed was a model that wasn't designed for 3D printing. I printed a miniature version of the 3D printer because I think I'm absolutely hilarious. And this was designed for more VFX use, not 3D printing, but Bamboo Studio still took it in and did its absolute best to put it out. And I've left a lot of the support material on the top rolls of filament because it wasn't designed for this, so I'm using that support to kind of hold it together. I think that's hilarious. The very first thing I printed was this. In fact, when you put something in to print it, it will auto-calculate how to add the supports. The second thing I printed was this, and I've left the supports on, although I'll take them off right now. This was sent in to me by a viewer named Darwin, and they didn't know I had this. It was like the day I got it, and they're like, hey, I made this cool 3D model if you want to have a look. And I was like, not only do I want to have a look, I'm going to print it. Now give me 1 second. I'm going to remove all these tree supports so you can see it properly. Okay, there it is. So it's a model. I'll try and get the angle right here. That looks like a pi symbol this way, but you spin it around and it's E. It's E, it's pi. How great is that? And it took me literally seconds to go from someone emailing me a model to being able to set it printing in the Bamboo printer. Now, Bamboo have already given me the printer, so we've done that. However, if enough people use my referral link below to order their own Bamboo printer or accessories, and you can have multiple colors, so you can do multiple color prints, which is what we did to be able to put the blue line on that one. And we could have done far more complicated ones. I'm still learning, but I'm having so much fun. Now, if enough people do use the link, Bamboo might sponsor another video. In that case, send me in more cool 3D models, things that you've made or found that I can print out in future Bamboo sponsorship messages. So there you are. Thank you so much to Bamboo for giving me the printer, sponsoring this video, referral link below. How cool is that?